Welcome to the Hearts Entwined Podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined Podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, and today I've got love coach and matchmaker, Lee-Anne Galloway. Welcome, Lee-Anne.
Hi, Lyn. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to talk about today's topic because I think one of the things that you're very passionate and enthusiastic about sharing is typically around traits and how do we attract the right sort of partner into our lives. Is that correct?
Yes, it's one of my favorite topics to discuss.
Excellent. So before we get into that, Lee-Anne, would you just like to share a little bit about yourself for our audience so that they get a feel for, I usually talk about, tell us about what actually led to you being in this industry. And I think that's usually a good backstory for our audience to get a feel around my guests.
Yeah. So I became a dating love coach through my own coaching experience. So in my late 20s, I had a pretty terrible breakup, and my mother was one of the original life coaches back in the day in the 90s, where if you said life coaching, somebody might have looked at you like you had three heads. So I was very lucky to be around those skills very early on in my life. So when I went through the breakup and I couldn't get over it, I was so stuck, and she suggested that I work with a coach. So I worked with this wonderful breakup coach, and when I finished, I just thought, I have to do this for other people. This is so important. Why does no one, teach us these things? So I went to school, got my coaching certification, went to the Relationship Coaching Institute, studied with them, which their focus was more singles, thinking that I would, of course, break out and just do breakups. That kind of evolved to include breakups, but it came part and parcel to learning how to be a successful single. And then about 3 years ago, through my connections, I was introduced to a wonderful matchmaker in Toronto looking to expand her business with matchmakers. And with my experience already in the dating world, it just seemed like a really great fit. So that started my matchmaking career. And I really felt like my coaching complemented that so well, because so many people just want you to find them love, not realizing that there's some inner work and some things that they could really use some help on. So that's kind of been my journey over the last decade.
Excellent. I love that. And I think that it's so important, like you say, to do that inner work first and get your own self to, at the highest level, I suppose, in terms of your own awareness at any moment in time, to attract the best possible quality partner rather than just any, I'll settle for this for now partner.
Yes. And I think a lot of people will come to me and say, oh, well, I'm really excited about matchmaking, but I don't need coaching. And I say, okay, but my package includes coaching, and, we'll just do a little assessment and we'll figure it out together. And inevitably, there's always something that's holding them back that then we can dig into. And specifically talking about those traits, when I meet with people for matchmaking, we go through that list, right? What are your top qualities you're looking for in a person? What are the personality traits? What values do you want to share? And I love when I say values and immediately people are stumped and they feel so confused. They're like, oh, values. Okay, could you give me some examples? And even though they know it, it's sometimes not evident. And that's one of the most important pieces to looking at your potential partner through that lens of your values.
Certainly, and I find this, when I'm sort of doing general goal setting with people, they'll have, the goal that they want to be wealthy, but then their values are all around family and love and relationships. So they're not focused on the business in any way, shape or form. And I'm saying, well, maybe you need to look at your values are not very aligned with this goal of you wanting to, make more money in your business.
It's so true. And I love just being also able to help people realize that if you really want something in someone, then you need to be at least trying to bring that to the table. Like, no one is perfect. Everyone is a work in progress, right? But if you're expecting, someone, let's say, to be athletic, and you really want them to take care of themselves, but that's at the bottom of your priority list and what you've been making time for in your life, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to attract someone and keep someone in your life that you want to be like that, because you're not walking the talk. So that's when we would get into, if that's really something you want, then what can we do now? What are little steps we can do to make that a priority? So even if you're not there yet, that's okay, but you have to be focused on it, right? And moving towards that, so that then when you meet that person who is athletic and health is important to them, you can already have things to share in that and then encourage each other.
Most certainly. So how, when you have a client come to you and you're talking about, do they actually have a preferential traits list, or don't they have a preferential traits list? If somebody hasn't even thought about, what sort of traits they are looking for in a potential partner, do you always recommend that that's the first place they start?
Yeah, like if they haven't really thought it through, I like to use analogies, just makes it a little bit easier for us to understand. So I say I have a cake analogy. So we're going to bake a cake, and the cake is going to be your person. And the cake starts with the main ingredients. You got eggs, you got flour, you've got sugar, you've got all the things you need, which are like the main relationship things that you want, the things that are non-negotiable in a relationship that you want. And so we get down to what those are. And then how you bake your cake is your functional and emotional needs. So the things that can be on a sliding scale. Maybe you really need humor in your, relationship. Maybe you need someone who's organized, different things of needs. But if someone wasn't 10 out of 10 on that all the time, that's okay. So anything that can be a sliding scale becomes how you bake your cake. So somebody bakes theirs at 425 for 30 minutes, or someone bakes theirs at 300 for an hour and a half, or whatever. And then how you decorate that cake is, all the things that we bring to the table as far as extras. A lot of women would love someone who's 6 foot. They would love someone who has a six pack and makes them laugh all the time. Mm-hmm. But maybe those are the way you decorate the cake. What if the cake showed up and didn't look like that, but it had everything else? That's when I, encourage people, you got to give people a chance, because it's really the ingredients and how you made that cake that's most important.
Yeah. And I think as well, another realization is that give that potential partner a chance. Sometimes attractiveness isn't always imminent from a first date. It might be worth going on a couple of dates with somebody to really, bring out their best traits and sides that then show themselves to be very attractive.
Yeah, it takes time to get to know someone, right? And so often we're very quick after a first date to say, oh, no, that person's not for me. And I'll challenge clients and say, okay, well, let's talk about why. Why is this person not worth another few hours of your time? I love when I get stories from clients and they say, oh, well, you know what? We were together for an hour and a half on that first date, right? And at the end of the date, they said something that clicked. And I realized, oh, I really like that. And then that made me realize I did want to spend more time with them. And I said, what if they hadn't have said that to the second date, but you never made it to that second date, right? So it is about giving people a chance and an opportunity to get to know them. And, Lynn, we were talking a little bit about, just women and how we look at men. And for us, in a heterosexual relationships, men really grow on women. There are so many women who will say, oh, I met him and he was okay. And, we had some great conversations, but whatever. And then the more they get to know them, they're like, oh, well, then he said something funny and now he's cute. And, we need time sometimes to allow people to grow on us and to give them the space to show us who they are. And on a first date, if somebody looks nice, smells nice, you had an okay time, you go out again. You need to go out again.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a definite, 1 to 3 out of 10 in terms of you weren't attracted to him in any way, shape or form and totally repelled, then probably not. But, sort of,
yes.
If he's around a 5 or 6, it's definitely worth another shot.
100%. And gosh, so many people get hung up on, we've made the list. Okay, yes, we have made this list, but it might not look or show up how you think. And you might not see all those pieces right away. So you need to be flexible, and you need to also remember that you are also someone's list. And how you show up and they see those things isn't going to be immediate either. So I think it's also a lot of kind of risk taking and in giving people those chances.
Yeah. It certainly is. And knowing that, it's good if you feel uncomfortable, it's good if you, like you said, think about it in terms of taking a risk, because even if it doesn't end up being a potential partner, you're learning such a lot from the dating process, aren't you?
Yeah, every date is a learning experience, right? You get a chance. I always say, there's no bad date. Worst case scenario, someone was rude, someone, you know what I mean? That's far and few between. But in the end, it'll either affirm what you're looking for and you're getting clear on how to look for it and the things to ask and the things to share in order to reflect that back. Or it'll reaffirm what, you know for sure doesn't work for you. But in the end, you've met another human, you've had a great, dating experience. Maybe you've practiced a dating skill that, you're not the best at, right? You can always learn something from a dating experience. Nothing is for the sake of nothing.
And also, I think, if you've met a nice guy, but you know that he's not necessarily the one for you, that you could see, a potential partner in, certainly that experience might then be something that you could share with another single girl who might be just his cup of tea, or their he's their cup of tea, and it could come about that way, couldn't it?
Oh, 100%. I've had that happen. I've set clients up, and the one woman has said to me, Lee-Anne, I really liked him. I totally see why you set us up. I don't know if he's a match for me, but I told him that he should go out with my girlfriend. and I say kudos to you, because that's what it's all about. It's even the same with when people get nervous to do networking or even just get outside their comfort zone at something that's not, let's say, a singles event or where singles for sure going to be. I say, you don't know who knows someone for you. You could meet another really wonderful woman and her brother is great for you. Personally, I had a colleague who was married and we became friends, and one day said, hey, I know somebody for you. I didn't realize you were single, and now he's my husband. So you don't know who's going to know your person. So you always have to be open to those possibilities.
Yeah, and then it can make it quite an exciting opportunity, rather than, thinking, oh, I've got to go on another date. What if he doesn't tick this thing on the list or that thing on the list? You can see it as a real great opportunity rather than, a potential chore.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. One of the 6 predictors of finding love again is being open and staying positive. And if you are open, also in those things we were talking about as far as traits, there's things that I push clients on that I don't think should be deal breakers. A lot of women, like I said, I joked, we want the 6 foot tall. I'll say, why? What does that represent to you? And they'll say, well, I mean, it means they're confident, and it means that they would want to take care of me, or it means that they would be able to protect me. And I said, okay, well, then what are other ways you could see that trait? Does that mean that someone who's 5'11" can't have those traits? So I really encourage people to get outside of, what they think that trait looks like. Excuse me, same for age. Like, especially men get so hung up on, well, they need to be this age. And I say, why do they need to be that way? And what's the evidence? And, would 1 year make or break a really wonderful person for you? And usually in the end, they say no, because they realize that age ultimately doesn't matter. It's lifestyle and where you are in your life and what you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, I actually look in my mirror and tell myself how wonderful it is that I'm reversing the aging process, because I'll be the big 60 next year. And I never look at my age in terms of years. I always look at it in terms of wisdom.
Yeah. And people, I think, there is merit sometimes when people want someone closer to their age because they think, oh, they'll get the references that I like, or we'll be able to, do similar things. But in the end, the interests, overall, you don't need somebody who shares all the same interests as you. Having someone exactly the same as you is a little bit boring. Now, that being said, this whole idea of opposites attract, I'm not a subscriber to that. I think we genuinely are looking for someone who shares, like we said, like the values and the main things that we are looking for to build in a relationship. But, if one of you likes skiing and the other one of you, does not, I do not think that that is a deal breaker. I think that's a, hey, I'm going to go skiing and you hang out in the chalet and enjoy some time to yourself. Yeah. And, we'll talk about it and share about it afterwards, because how exciting is it to learn about new things from someone that you're with and have them teach you about it and then share your things with them as well. And I mean, that also ensures that you're going to stay independent. One of the biggest things in a relationship is thinking about you being in a car, right? If you're in a car, your partner's in a car, you're driving on the path together, right? In both of your cars. You don't want to jump out of your car and get into their car, because what if that doesn't work out, right? You need to have always your own life, because that makes you more interesting to your partner. It's more fulfilling because you have your own interests and things, and then exciting to teach each other and enjoy that together.
Definitely, it stops you sliding into that unhealthy space of codependency, doesn't it? Which can become very toxic.
Oh, yeah, and it can become so easy, especially in the beginning. I think holding those boundaries and giving yourself the space to stay true to your own things, to make sure you don't walk away from friendships as soon as you start that relationship, right? Or walk away from, your routine of things you love to do. Yes, make space and time for your partner, but you got to keep the things that you love, because that's what makes you cool and interesting.
Absolutely. And that's what's attracted him to you, the fact that you're that current independent person doing the current activities you are doing with the friends that you've got. So, if you drop all of that, you suddenly become somebody else.
Yeah. And I think that happens in a lot of relationships where we do the pretzel and we do the, codependency, and we go all the way because we think, oh, this person's so great and I want to give them all my things and I want to give them everything, not realizing that in the end that might flip and turn that person away from us, because they're like, I really loved when you had your own life and your own things.
Yeah, they're attracted to you, because you exude that energy of independence, and he's or she is just the, as I refer to, the cherry on the top of the cake, of an already great life.
I love that. The cherry on the top. That's so good. I think too, especially in dating profiles, like when people are doing online dating and they're deciding which traits or which attributes to share about themselves, honestly, the more you share and you are open about what makes you unique, it's only going to attract people who want to get to know you. I love when people are like, well, I don't know if I should put that because that might, lower my chances of getting lots of messages. And I say, well, you don't want lots of messages. You want the people who are intrigued by what makes you special. And those are the people who you're going to have a better relationship with. So let's put it on display. Let's be unique. Let's show off your, let's say really weird hobby, or let's show off that, you love to debate, or let's not shy away from it, because ultimately, if you're proud and happy with who you are and you've done that work, well, then we want to showcase that, because that's going to attract somebody who has those same traits. Right? And who does want to debate, or who thinks it's cool that, I don't know, weird hobby, like thinks that it's cool that you ride horses, 5 days a week, or you do this or whatever it is, right?
Definitely. It is quality. In other words, the better type of match for you rather than quantity.
Yeah. I think people get really hung up on that, especially in online dating. Well, I don't have a lot of messages. And I'm like, but are the people you're choosing and taking the time to write messages to, are they the people you're really interested in? And well, then, you just keep going. It's less about having the masses. It's about casting a net wide, but I think it's about casting a net wide in your tools. So that's why I say do the online dating. A lot of people think, oh, I just can't. And I'm like, you know what? It's not going away. It's part of our digital world now. It's got to be a tool in the toolbox. But you also have lots of other tools where you can meet people in life, be at certain events, join groups, use a matchmaker. There are lots of ways to meet people. So it's a tool. But in which case, exactly like you said, Lynn, don't worry about the quantity. Worry about the quantity and getting more narrow and more narrow as you go on, because you're going to get clearer and clearer.
Yeah, quality every time, because they're going to be far better, suitable matches for what you're looking for than, if you spread your net too wide and then you're thinning out the chances of meeting those quality people that are potentially a great match for a future partner.
Yeah, so true.
So when you think about explaining to, say, somebody who's really naive and they're thinking about, well, I've not really thought about what traits I want in another partner, how do you sort of instigate that conversation as to what are traits and what potentially are good traits to look for in a partner?
Yeah, I usually offer them a few lists of things and say, this is not extensive, but this is just to get your juices flowing and get you thinking about what those things are. But, personality wise, I have like a little bit of a chart where, when you look at personality traits, there's usually an opposite, right? Like, so for instance, a big one is introverted or extroverted, right?
Yes.
And where do you fall on that scale? And then where do you think it would be great for your partner to fall on that scale? Some people think, oh, I really want someone who's extroverted because I'm super introverted. It'll help me. And that's where I stop and say, okay, we need to remember that our partner isn't here to change us. A partner is here to complement us. So if you really want to be more extroverted in the way you are, or you're feeling shy and, you want to be able to have more conversations or be able to engage more in social situations, that's something you have to work on yourself, right?
Yes.
You can't rely on that person to do that. But if you are more introverted and you would like someone a bit more extroverted because you just feel in general you're a little more attracted to that, then that's definitely okay, right? But I think it comes down to, especially with those personality traits, not necessarily like when you look at yourself, think about what's going to complement or what you like, not like someone's trait that you're expecting them to help you with. That's, I think, where we get stuck. So I think people really appreciate that and then are able to look at those traits a little more objectively and go, what really would complement me? You know, for instance, when I met my husband, I knew that I tend to be a little more chatty, a little more outgoing. And it was hard for me to be with someone a little bit more introverted because it made me maybe not feel so confident about that trait. So I knew that I liked to have someone who was a bit more extroverted because it would reaffirm to me that I enjoy being like that. And I knew that we could go to social situations and I would enjoy having them there also engaging in conversations.
Yeah, and he wouldn't feel awkward in that situation because it's not his scene.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I have a lot of people who feel like that, for instance, but then I have a lot of introverts who say, you know, it would be nice for me to also have someone who's introverted. So if we do go to a social situation, we work together to talk to people, and it's okay when we're ready to leave and we've had enough of that, you know, situation, right? So personality traits, I definitely use the scale and we go through the different traits and go, well, if I'm on this end or I'm in the middle, do I also want somebody else who's in the middle, or what does that look like, right? And personality traits are a bit easier to see when you meet somebody. I think the cake traits that we were talking about, like the nitty gritty things about what you want your relationship to be like, take a bit more time to assess, right? But values, for instance, which is all part of that as well, you can sometimes tell, you know, I had a client who said family is super important to her and her sister, you know, attached at the hip. And someone on a date said something like they didn't even know what one of their siblings did for work. And for her, immediately that sparked, you know, I really do want someone who's involved with their family and really is part of that. So she knew that maybe that value might be off for her. And that was a great way to assess it, right? Figuring out how to assess those traits on dates too, super important. And I think a lot of people have a hard time with that.
Yeah. I think that's very true. And sometimes, you know, like you say, people get confused about the distinction between what are complementary traits and what are traits that you might be just wanting because you want to fill that void in you or want them to, you know, teach you to be more like that.
And I think, like we said earlier, Lynn, the idea of giving people a chance to, you know, we're not perfect. And when our partner for us meets us, there's going to be one or two things where they're like, it'd be great if you were higher on the scale on this trait, but it doesn't matter because you have all the other things. And I think that's part of the key as well is, you know, if someone's got one of those traits and it's close to where you want it, but maybe it's not exactly there, but there's all the other good things, don't write that person off. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, give it a chance, see how it goes, and see if that is a compromise you're willing to take. I think there's a lot of talk about don't compromise in a relationship and, you know, don't settle. I really dislike that word. I think it allows us then to think that other people are going to be perfect, and then also puts the pressure on us to be perfect. And I think it's about assessing, you know, how much of something someone has and doing the compromise there, right? Being like, it would be great if someone was a 6 out of 10 on this trait, but you know, if they're only kind of showing up as a 4, I can still take it because they got the values and the lifestyle I want, right? I think that's the idea of compromise. When I think settle, I think people think, oh, well, I'm not going to get all the things I want. And I don't think that's the right mindset.
No, it's not. You know, like you say, that sort of settling connotation, I think can also make us eliminate people so quickly and not give them a chance when there could have been a perfect, great partner for you. You know, by being overly picky and not having that flexibility, can leave you single for a hell of a lot of years.
Right? I think you're so right in the picky. And I have a lot of people who will come to me and say, I think I'm too picky. And I go, okay, well, let's look at it. Right. And then know that I'm here to challenge you if I think you're being too picky. Right. And I'm a big advocate for dating your non-type. I think it's so important to, go out on some dates with people maybe you think you might never have gone on a date with. And a lot of people, when I say, if you look back in your dating history, is there anybody you think you should have gave a chance and you didn't? Most of the time they're like, yeah, there is, right? And that's where I go, you just don't know enough from an immediate first impression with someone if they're outside your quote unquote type, right? Especially when people get stuck on physical types. I encourage them to date somebody who's not your type. If you only date tall blondes, then I want you to date a short brunette, right? Let's give it a try and see, because, especially with the physical types, we all get older. We all are no one is escaping aging. So I think it's important to get outside your physical type 100% and just try it on. There is no harm in getting to know somebody and seeing if, those things really are malleable and if you've been stuck in a certain type.
I agree with that, because I can remember, when I was in my teens and 20s, at that time amongst my peers, I don't feel it so much now, but I was considered taller than average. So for me, I was definitely looking for a guy that was taller than me. And on top of that, because I was quite curvaceous, I also wanted a guy that was taller than me to make me feel not so conspicuous in my size.
Right.
And that's now when I look back at those, that sort of thinking, I'm thinking, why? Because I excluded so many lovely guys who could have, potentially been a great match for me otherwise.
Yes, it's so true. And I say, a really good coach friend of mine, Lori Davis, she has a great TED Talk called Saying Yes to the Maybe. And I share it with clients all the time because, in her company, she had done a lot of research on, with online dating, who did you actually end up with? Did you end up with your yes, or did you end up with your maybe person? And I think it was something like 90% of the time people end up with someone they said maybe to. And I think it's really important. I'm geeky about science and I love all that kind of stuff. And I love knowing from the algorithms and things we've learned now because we've got that technology and who people end up with. And that's why I say, you have to, I say for every, 5 yeses, you got to say yes to a maybe. And see, especially in the online culture too, people take terrible photos. I take terrible photos. I can remember going on dates and my date saying, wow, you're really gorgeous in person. And I didn't take it personally because I knew I'm not super photogenic. But, in the online culture, that might have, held me back because maybe people didn't get the right impression of me through the photos. And that's where I go, you can't totally get a sense of someone from photos and writing. You got to meet them in person and you got to give them a chance. And that's why you say yes to them, maybe.
I think that's going to be a great title for this podcast. Saying yes to the maybe.
Say yes to the maybe. I mean, I'm glad I give that to my friend Lori. But it's so important, and you've got to really give people a chance. And I think it also plays into our fears, right? And knowing that, the more you just get out there and give it a try, the less scary dating becomes. And I think that also helps you become more open.
Definitely. There's been so much wisdom shared there, Lee-Anne. I really, really, really think the audience and the listeners are going to get a lot of value from listening to this particular episode. So thank you so much for sharing all of that in this discussion.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. I love talking about this stuff. So
how can our listeners get in touch with you? Would you share, your best contact information? I know that my listeners know that all of it is going to be in the show notes anyway, but I also like, to give the guest an option to share it on the audio as well.
Yeah, so you can get in touch with me on Instagram at Love Coach Lee-Anne. You can also find me on the web at lovecoachleanne.com. And I always have my calendar open for free calls, like 20 minutes, always welcome talking to people to offer my advice and see how I can help them or give them a resource on their journey.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And I'll just affirm again that I will make sure that Lee-Anne's contact information as well as her personal bio information is included as always in our show notes for those of you who didn't quite catch that on the audio. So it just leaves me to say, Lee-Anne, thank you so much again for sharing your insights and great tips around, saying yes to the maybes and, the quality over quantity around the traits.
No, thank you so much. And you're a wonderful host, Lyn. It's been awesome to have a chat.
Thank you. So on that note, thank you, listeners. We're very grateful for you tuning in. I'm going to end with, as always, true love starts with opening our hearts. So until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.